Hi, welcome back. My name's Ginger and you're at the Copycat Quilter channel. So I thought maybe I was done with those triangles in a square, and just like the other times I found yet another way. So in that EQ8 video I showed you how to print out the foundation paper piecing pattern to use to sew that triangle in that method, but then I realized I didn't even show how to do that. Now I am no expert at foundation paper piecing, and you will see that in this video, but I did want to share the video, and if you stay all the way till the end, you'll probably see some messes that I've made. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you back soon. Here I have my sheet that came out of EQ8. I printed it out. It's the exact size of the triangle that I need. There are 3 pieces, A1, 2, and 3, which tells you the order that you're going to sew. So the first kind of different thing about paper piecing that throws me for a loop, and probably a lot of people, you don't cut the pieces to the size that you need. They just need to be bigger because you can trim them. Now there are some people who do trim their pieces in advance. I would prefer not to do that. To help me see that line, because I printed on heavy printer paper, you can also print on foundation paper piecing paper, which is not very expensive. And it's a little more translucent and it tears easier. But for me, I'm going to use that kind of as my line, and I just need to make sure that my fabric crosses that line by at least 1/4 inch. I do kind of want to keep my grain straight, so instead of doing like this and ending up with bias edges out here, I'm going to kind of straighten mine out, making sure I cover all of that by 1/4 inch. And this piece against the first piece, you'll have right side up this way, so my wrong side is touching the paper. So one of the things that you want to check for your next piece is that it's going to cover that entire triangle from the other side. And again, let me do this. I'm going to go ahead and fold this on all 4 sides so that I can see where those lines are from the back side. Just to make it a little easier whenever I'm trying to line up my fabric. So this is A1, so that's the first piece I want to lay. When you lay your fabric down, this is a solid, it doesn't have a right and wrong side, but if you do have a right and wrong side, for the first piece, you want to make sure that your right side is facing up. So my wrong side is to the paper. I'm laying this out past the line. You want it to be at least 1/4 inch past that crease. I want to try to keep my grain a little straight, so I'm going to sew this way instead of like this, because then I end up with some bias stuff going on. And quilters usually don't like bias. So again, this is right side up. Now I need to lay my center piece down, and I need to make sure it covers those same lines by 1/4 inch, so that it's covering everything on the back side here that's supposed to be a triangle. And this is big enough. I'm going to flip this over, line it up where it's at least 1/4 inch past that crease. And now it's all sliding. To me, this is a little fiddly, and that's why I don't really prefer paper piecing like this. I'm going to put a pin through just to kind of hold that in place, because to sew it, I need to flip it over, and that didn't get through the paper. Awesome. To sew it, let me get the pin all the way through the paper this time, which tends to bend pins easily. So I put the pin in because I need to flip it over to sew it. And I'm going to sew on that straight line. So keeping all of that in place, see why I pinned it when I flip it. Again, fiddly. I'm going to sew straight on that line. The next thing I would want to do is to take all of that out of the way, so the paper and the excess fabric, and trim about 1/4 inch seam. forgot to take that pin out, so glad I didn't. So cut over the pin with my rotary cutter. Rotary cutters do not tend to like that. Now you could take it to the machine, take it to the iron and press it open. But I'm going to do a little finger press there. And then roll it with this little roller. This is just a little plastic roller. It's a Clover product. And it's handy to have around just to do something like that. It's not as good as an iron, but it is pretty close. Or it's close enough to work. Also going to fold that piece back again and trim this to 1/4 inch because it'll just make it a little easier to lay that next side piece. My day job, I work a lot with people from the UK and other countries as well. But I hear them say fiddly bits, and I hear that sometimes on YouTube channels that I watch from people that are in England or somewhere in the UK. And this is exactly the definition of fiddly bits, doing all that trimming. Now you do have people that just absolutely love paper piecing, and I'm certainly not criticizing those people. I'm going to lay this now, where this will pass at least 1/4 inch past that one. And now I'm doing right sides together. That first piece is the one that you need to be sure you lay the wrong side down and the right side up. The rest of them, as you're adding, go to right sides together. Let me make sure when I pin that I get some of that paper in there and not just fabric. I want to make sure I'm covering my corner up there. So then, again, I'm going to flip and take it to the sewing machine and sew on that line. I'm going to start about 1/4 inch before that mark. About 1/4 inch before where the line starts. I'm going to work to get these threads out of the way. And again, so straight down the line, making sure all this underneath stays nice and flat. Moving back over to the paper, I want to lay this down. I'm going to fold it back and trim that little piece to about 1/4 inch. I just realized this is probably one of the only times in quilting that you use the words about 1/4 inch if you're trying to make patchwork, because the 1/4 inch makes your points match and those kind of things. Most patterns are written for 1/4 inch seam allowance. And here, if it worked, we have our triangle in a square. And we press again, or roll again. Flip it upside down. I'm going to trim around these edges. So there's a dark line that is your stitch line, and then there's the dotted line or lighter line that's actually your seam allowance line. Get on that 1/4 inch, get on that dotted line. Look how much better that runs. Cut all the way around the square on the dotted line. And there we have our finished block. After you've done all that, you want to rip apart the paper. A couple of hints for how to get the paper to release easy. Use a big needle in your sewing machine. So like a size 90 top stitch needle. And that will perforate that paper with bigger holes to make it easier to rip. But also use a short stitch length. And when you use that shorter stitch length, it also perforates the paper and makes it easier to rip off the back. So that's another way that you could do this triangle and a square, using the paper piecing method and using Electric Quilt 8 to print out that template for you. I like the EQ8 because it lets me make exactly the size of the quilt that I'm trying to copy to match the other blocks in that quilt. So that was a lot. You can see I'm not very adept at foundation paper piecing, but it does give you some great results. And I'm sure if I tried it enough and worked with it that I would become proficient at it. And you definitely can do some beautiful, intricate blocks with it. But at least you got to see how you could make this triangle block using the foundation paper piecing. So I think I may be done with triangles for a while, but we'll see. I do have another quilt that I want to show you really soon. So thanks for stopping by. Hit the like, subscribe, notify buttons, and let me know in the comments below if there's a block or something that you would like to see me make, and I'll see if I can try to do that. Meantime, enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to see you back soon. I could have stopped before I sewed that line and trimmed the space out behind it. Now, it looks like I have screwed up. This is another reason I don't really like the paper piecing. I didn't get this folded over enough to actually cover that top corner, so I'm going to lose that piece.